The restaurant was buzzing with the usual lunchtime crowd, a mix of clinking cutlery and soft murmurs filling the air. I had chosen a corner table by the window, relishing the rare moment of solitude. The sun's warm rays cast a comforting glow on my table as I waited for my favorite meal, the chicken pesto pasta, to arrive. This place had become my little sanctuary over the years, a place where I could think and reflect. Just as I was about to take a sip of my iced tea, I heard the door chime. I glanced up absentmindedly, my eyes scanning the entrance. That's when I saw him. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze. James, my ex-husband, the man who had walked out of my life 9 years ago, convinced I was the reason we couldn't have children. He hadn't changed much. His hair was slightly grayer, and there were a few more lines etched on his face, but he still carried himself with that familiar air of arrogance. He was with a woman and a young boy, about 8 years old, who was chattering excitedly. I watched, unable to look away, as they were shown to a table not far from mine. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. James' expression shifted from casual disinterest to shock. He whispered something to the woman beside him, and then, as if drawn by some invisible force, he started walking toward me. I quickly composed myself, determined to face him with dignity. "Emily," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hello, James," I replied evenly. "It's been a long time." James nodded, glancing around as if unsure what to say next. Just then, Mason appeared at my side, his bright eyes full of curiosity. He had been exploring the restaurant, something he loved to do when we ate out. "Mom, who is this?" Mason asked, looking up at James with innocent interest. I smiled, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Mason, this is James. He's an old friend of mine." I looked at James, watching his reaction carefully. "James, this is my son, Mason." James's face turned a shade paler. He stared at Mason, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Your son," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, my son," I affirmed gently. "Mason, why don't you go wash your hands? Lunch will be here soon." Mason nodded and scampered off, leaving James and me alone in an awkward silence. "Emily, we need to talk," James said, finally breaking the silence, his voice strained. I nodded. "I suppose we do. How about we meet tomorrow, at the cafe on Maple Street? It's quieter there." James agreed, albeit reluctantly, and returned to his table. I watched him go, feeling a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Mason returned, and I focused on him, pushing thoughts of James aside for the moment. When our meals arrived, I couldn't help but notice James' stealing glances at us. Mason, oblivious to the tension, chatted happily about his day. As I listened to my son, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and relief. Life had taken unexpected turns, but sitting there with Mason, I knew I had found my true happiness. As we finished our meal and prepared to leave, I saw James watching us, his expression unreadable. I smiled at Mason, my heart swelling with love for my son. Tomorrow would bring more questions and perhaps some difficult conversations, but for now, I was content. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" I asked Mason, my voice light. "Yeah, Mom. Can we get ice cream on the way home?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Of course we can," I replied, taking his hand and heading out of the restaurant, feeling James's gaze follow us until we were out of sight. As I sat in the cafe the next day, waiting for James, memories of our past cascaded through my mind like a relentless tide. The clinking of cups and the murmur of quiet conversations around me seemed distant, overshadowed by the weight of what was about to unfold. This cafe on Maple Street had always been a place of solace for me, but today, it felt like the staging ground for a confrontation with the ghosts of my past. I thought back to the early days of our marriage. James and I had been so in love, full of dreams and plans for our future. We had a small, cozy apartment filled with laughter and hope. The desire to start a family was at the core of our relationship. We both came from different backgrounds, James from a large, boisterous family, and me an only child. The prospect of creating our own family was something we both cherished deeply. But as the years went by, our dream began to slip away. Month after month, year after year, we tried to conceive, but nothing happened. The joy and anticipation turned into frustration and disappointment. James' patience wore thin, and his frustration turned into accusations. He refused to see a doctor, convinced that his family's history of fertility meant the problem was with me. I remembered the countless arguments that stemmed from this issue. His pride wouldn't allow him to consider the possibility that he might be the one with a problem. His words still echoed in my mind, each one a dagger to my heart. "Emily, it has to be you. There's no other explanation," he had said one night, his voice cold and detached. Eventually, the bitterness and resentment consumed our relationship. James became increasingly distant, and I felt more isolated than ever. The love that once bound us was eroded by blame and sorrow. Our divorce was inevitable, a painful end to what once seemed like a fairy tale. After we separated, I was determined to find answers. I visited a specialist alone, and the news was both a relief and a cruel twist of fate. "There's nothing wrong with you, Emily. You're perfectly healthy and capable of having children," the doctor had told me. The irony of those words stung, but they also gave me hope. Not long after, I met Andrew. He was everything James wasn't: kind, patient, and supportive. He helped me heal from the wounds of my past, and when we got married, I found happiness again. Mason was born a year later, bringing joy and fulfillment into my life. My thoughts were interrupted when James walked in, looking tense and uncertain. He spotted me and made his way over, sitting down with a sigh. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "Emily, I'm sorry for the way I reacted yesterday," James began, his voice low. I was just shocked. "I understand, James. It was a surprise for me too," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. "Emily, I need to know," he said, leaning forward, his eyes searching mine. "How did you have a child? We tried for so long, and nothing happened." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "James, after you left, I saw a doctor. There was nothing wrong with me. I was perfectly healthy and capable of having children. The problem wasn't with me," I explained gently. James looked down, his hands clenched into fists. "So it was me," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "I was the one who couldn't. I was the reason." "James, I'm not here to blame you," I said softly. "But you needed to know the truth. It wasn't fair to either of us to live with the misconceptions we had." He nodded slowly, still processing the revelation. "Emily, I'm going to see a doctor," he said finally, his voice filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I need to know for sure." I reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "I think that's a good idea, James. It's important to know the truth, for your sake and for the sake of your family." So James visited the doctor and came home. James parked the car and sat in silence for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He had been dreading this confrontation, but he knew it was unavoidable. Mia deserved the truth, and so did he. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, heading towards the front door. Mia was in the kitchen, her back to him as she prepared dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, but James barely noticed. His mind was consumed with the impending conversation. "Mia, we need to talk," he said, his voice breaking the silence. She turned, a look of concern crossing her face. "James, what's wrong? You've been so distant lately." James sat down at the kitchen table, running a hand through his hair. "I went to see a doctor," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "about my fertility." Mia's eyes widened in surprise. "Your fertility? James, what are you talking about?" He looked at her, pain evident in his eyes. "Mia, I'm sterile. I've been sterile for years. There's no way I could have fathered Benjamin." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Mia's face turned pale, and she leaned against the counter for support. James, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me the truth, Mia," James said, his voice firm but filled with desperation. "Is Benjamin really my son?" Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she struggled to find the right words. "James, I didn't mean to hurt you. It was before we got serious, before we even talked about starting a family. I didn't think it would matter." James stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. "It does matter, Mia. It matters more than anything. You've lied to me for years. You made me believe Benjamin was mine. I didn't know how to tell you." Mia cried, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose you." James took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside him. "Mia, you should have told me. We could have figured it out together. But instead, you kept this huge secret from me. How can I trust you now?" Mia wiped away her tears, looking at James with pleading eyes. "Please, James, I love you. Benjamin loves you. You're the only father he's ever known." James's heart ached at her words. He loved Benjamin more than anything, but the betrayal cut deep. "I need some time, Mia," he said quietly. "I need to process this." He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Mia standing there, tears streaming down her face. He needed space, time to think about everything that had happened. He needed to figure out what this meant for his future, for his relationship with Mia, and most importantly, for his bond with Benjamin. The days following the confrontation with Mia were a blur of confusion and emotional turmoil. James found himself grappling with the harsh reality of his sterility and the betrayal that had upended his life. He took long walks to clear his head, replaying the conversation with Mia over and over in his mind. Each step felt heavy, burdened with questions and doubts about his past, present, and future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, James decided it was time to confront another uncomfortable truth. He needed to speak with Benjamin to understand how this revelation would affect his relationship with the boy he had raised and loved as his own. The thought of this conversation filled him with dread, but he knew it was necessary. He found Benjamin in his room, hunched over his desk, working on a school project. The sight of his son, so focused, so innocent, brought a lump to James's throat. He knocked gently on the doorframe, and Benjamin looked up, his face breaking into a smile. "Hey, Dad," Benjamin said, setting down his pencil. "What's up?" James took a deep breath and sat down on the edge of the bed. "Hey, Ben, we need to talk about something important." Benjamin's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "Is everything okay?" James nodded, struggling to find the right words. "There's something I need to tell you. Something about our family. It's complicated." Benjamin frowned, leaning forward. "What is it, Dad? You're scaring me." James reached out and placed a hand on Benjamin's shoulder. "You know I love you, right? No matter what." "Of course," Benjamin replied, his eyes wide with worry. James took another deep breath, feeling his heart pound in his chest. "I recently found out that I can't have children. I'm sterile." Benjamin's eyes widened in shock. "What? But then how?" "It means that biologically, I'm not your father," James said, his voice trembling. "Your mom, she had a relationship before we got serious, and you were born from that." Benjamin sat back, his face pale. "So you're not my real dad?" "I may not be your biological father, but that doesn't change how I feel about you," James said firmly. "I've raised you, loved you, and cared for you. Nothing will ever change that." Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" James's heart broke at the sight of his son's tears. "I didn't know Ben. I just found out myself, and as soon as I knew, I wanted to be honest with you." Benjamin wiped his eyes, looking down at his hands. "I don't know what to say." James pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that I love you, and that will never change. We'll get through this together." The weeks following the revelations were challenging for everyone involved. James and Mia worked hard to rebuild the trust that had been shattered by the secrets of the past. It was a slow and often painful process, but they were committed to healing their family and moving forward. James had started seeing a therapist to help him process the emotional turmoil he was experiencing. He encouraged Mia to join him in couples counseling, and after some initial hesitation, she agreed. They both knew that this was a critical step in rebuilding their relationship. James found solace in his relationship with Benjamin, which remained strong despite the revelations. They bonded over shared interests, spending weekends fishing, hiking, and working on school projects together. James took every opportunity to reinforce to Benjamin that his love was unwavering and unconditional. One evening, as James and Mia sat on the porch watching the sunset, James took her hand in his. "I know we still have a long way to go, but I'm hopeful, Mia. I really am." Mia squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "So am I, James. I feel like we're finally on the right path." He nodded, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. "We are, and we'll keep walking it together, one step at a time."